Hi, thanks very much, Peg. My name is Mardith or Mardith Louisell, or Louisell if you prefer. First of all, I want to thank Peg, and I'm so honored to be here and read with all these other wonderful people and wonderful writers. So thank you very much. It's, as I said, a great honor. I'm actually going to read from Had They Learned About Jane Mansfield. And this is an excerpt from a longer story. I think you'll be able to get the idea of what it's about as I start reading. I couldn't go to a movie with a friend because I had to go to my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend's daughter's wedding. The movie was about a serial killer, but it was French, so I knew it would be okay. Unlike Felicia's Journey, an Irish serial killer movie I'd seen. When I told my friend why I couldn't go, she said, "Why do people get married anyway?" I didn't know. Felicia's Journey was before I understood I couldn't watch violence, and during the time when I was still going to men's movies. I hadn't yet analyzed the fact that wives went to the Fight Club and Dumb and Dumber, but husbands didn't go to wedding movies like Pride and Prejudice, or to other films that took place after the wedding. Men's selfishness in movie choices was like the rest of life, in which wives went to football games, but husbands didn't attend the deep-thinking plays their wives wanted to see, even though every Sunday magazine survey showed that straight men liked being married more than women and should therefore be more willing to compromise. But no matter how often newspapers printed the surveys, the results were always new to the young women, like the bride-to-be, who didn't believe the surveys were true. You'd think that being invited to a wedding would be preferable to a movie about serial killers. I was glad the bride's mother had invited me, although I knew she'd invited me only because of my boyfriend. I'd attended only a handful of weddings in 30 years. Now there had been 15 in the past 4. Also, many movies about serial killers. What did serial killers and weddings have in common? Maybe it was suspense about what came next. But the young didn't feel this suspense. Even though evidence for short-lived marriages was everywhere, the young knew about marriage only as an issue for same-sex couples. This was one difference between our generations. The others included pants hanging past the butt crack, global warming, and migration from sensible Midwestern places to the California playground, where the dry light caused cataracts as well as skin cancer, jitteriness, and addiction to New Age philosophies as an antidote to jitteriness. Didn't my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend's daughter and her fiancé know about the oppression of women and that the patriarchal legal structure was so ingrained that they wouldn't even realize they were living it? The younger generation commits to each other, the bride's mother said. We married to get presents, or because someone was too stoned to say no. I referred her to Virginia Woolf. 9 out of 10 people on the street, Woolf wrote, would say they wanted love, nothing but love. But once married, women would say, "This is not what we want. There is nothing more tedious, puerile, and inhumane than this, yet it is also beautiful and necessary." Here were 2 conflicting ideas that could give you a headache, and probably gave one to Virginia Woolf. I hoped the bride's mother had told her daughter what to do when the marriage went bad, and her dopamine receptors meshed with her mates, and she couldn't leave because she was addicted. It wasn't long enough ago that I was addicted to Law and Order SVU, following the plot while I pretended to read War and Peace, and reaching only page 36 before the book was due at the library for the second time. As I pretended to read, I wondered if the victim on SVU would live, and if so, would rape ruin her life? I made up backstories for the low-life rapists. How did they get that way? What about the feral teenagers who raped the handicapped 13-year-old? It seemed to me that no amount of therapy or substance abuse treatment was going to help. story of Mariska Hargitay, the female detective on SVU, is that she's the daughter of Jane Mansfield and Mickey Hargitay. Growing up, I read Movie Screen magazine and systematically examined Jane Mansfield in her floor-length, sequined, skin-tight sheaths. Her IQ was 168, and she had been a classical pianist. Jane Mansfield wore low-cut gowns that she let slip when she was out to dinner, so her nipples exposed themselves. By such a gesture, she herself gained more exposure. In 6th grade, I saw that looking like her would mean a life unlike the boring one that seemed inevitable for me, even though I, too, was a classically trained pianist. Maybe if I hadn't considered Jane Mansfield second rate to Elizabeth Taylor, I would have tried to be more like her. I would have had a fuller life, married 3 times, and wanted to hang out with friends at weddings instead of seeing a movie about a serial killer. Although Jane Mansfield was killed in a car accident at 34, so maybe I'd be dead. I didn't know then that 3-year-old Mariska Hargitay, in the back seat when the car was hit, would grow up to star on Law & Order SVU, and that I'd watch Jane Mansfield's jeans for half of my waking life. When our car twisted up the switchbacks to my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend's daughter's wedding in the brown California hills, I calculated how far we were from a corner store if the wedding didn't provide chocolate and I needed to charge up my endorphins. If I started crying because my life hadn't worked out as well as the young couple imagined theirs would, I couldn't very well excuse myself by telling the groom, "I'm sorry, I need to get away to stop being bitter because my boyfriend likes bad movies and I never went to live in France and now it's too late." The ceremony was held under an oak tree. There the groom and bride, more beautiful and elegant than Jane Mansfield, picked from a wicker basket scraps of paper on which they had written vows. "I will make you laugh when you're down. I will support you in your work and your hobbies and all you do. I will help you play. I will listen always." The problem with self-written vows was no training in poetry. And the couple's handwritten vows were also hard to read. Wouldn't it have been better to type them in 16-point Tahoma, which everyone knows is the best font for reading? Among the young people at the wedding, everyone was a singer, writer, performance artist, or computer expert. The computer experts had the money, and I had to hope they were marrying the singers and artists. With only computer experts and artists, what would happen to California? Who would write the wedding vows? The computer experts or the artists? I didn't know which to hope for. After the vows were finished and the Universalist life minister pronounced them wed, the guests began the toasts. "We've learned so much from you," their best friend said. The next friend repeated this, then 5 more. I was puzzled. How could they have learned so much from 25-year-olds? Had they learned about Jane Mansfield? Did they know about Abraham and Isaac and that our generation would send their generation to war? Did they know what not to say when they got mad at their spouses? I knew they were too young to know about lust fading. What had the couple taught their friends? And why were these weddings so earnest? Why couldn't weddings just be a good party? The couple should hope for kids, good sex for a while, and 2 incomes to support aging parents. The mother cried at the wedding. She was a romantic. She hoped for a bright future and forgot the sad parts. Or maybe she cried because, like me, she compared her life to the happy couples and found it lacking. And of course, there was also the teary relief of getting a child off their hands. Thank you.